Wow, we're on episode 2 already. And let me tell you, this time around, I've got some good stuff for you. Really worth sticking around for. Actually, I wrote this intro before the reviews, so that might not be true. They might all be real turds. But let's find out, shall we? Oh boy, this was a rough one. You know, it's a pretty fucked up story. Without going into too much detail, it's essentially about childhood trauma. You can probably figure out the rest. But it's also about how we deal with that kind of trauma and how memories work. Sometimes we just block things out, and sometimes we make up our own story. We can just basically invent our own take on what happened in the past, if we need to. But if you go digging, you might find that the facts don't really add up to what you remember. Now, on a technical level, this movie is very interesting. It's a bit of a mixed bag. It looks very much like a made-for-TV movie, which it is, but in this day and age, there's really no excuse for it anymore. And the writing, the dialogue, was just a bit stiff. It didn't sound natural, but the acting is good. Laura Dern is great, and they use some really interesting techniques in this movie. They have some shots from the point of view of certain characters, and sometimes they break the fourth wall and talk to the camera. Sometimes the main character interviews people from her past, in her own head. And a lot of the story is told through these sort of dynamic flashbacks that change when she learns new things. I like that a lot. It didn't really feel like any movie I can think of. Too bad about the cheap look and the kind of clunky dialogue though. It definitely brought it down a notch. So would I recommend it? Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind the subject matter, it is pretty disturbing. But it's also a pretty decent movie. Kinda saved by the acting and the creative techniques. Another French movie. And another one I have some very mixed feelings about. You know, when I look at the notes for this one, they all basically describe the character. I didn't really write anything down about the story, or what happened. I guess because the story doesn't really matter that much. This actually feels a lot like a character study. It's all about this woman and how she deals with things. At the beginning of the movie, she's a bit of a mess. And that's to put it mildly. She's a bit unhinged. Not exactly the poster girl for stability and having your shit together. Some of the words I wrote down to describe her were abrasive and disingenuous. And she kinda lacks people skills. Although not really. She kinda gets along with people when she wants to. But she's also very good at pushing people away. And she's a bit of a compulsive liar. And that's really one of her biggest issues. And she doesn't just lie to everyone around her. She lies to herself too. And I didn't like her at all. She came across as very unlikable. I wouldn't want to have anything to do with her in real life. But at the end of the movie, she's showing signs of growth. And you realize she is trying to better herself. She doesn't want to be the person she is. And I ended up liking her a lot more. And because of that, I ended up liking the movie. But I didn't start off liking it. At all. I found it to be kinda off-putting, to be honest. But I stuck around. And ended up a little bit torn. It definitely did something right. So would I recommend it? Yeah, probably. I'd say it's worth giving a shot. It's something different for sure. And that's gotta count for something, right? So this was not what I expected. I thought it was gonna be another one of those quirky, cutesy indies, but it's not. It's actually pretty mellow and toned down. A lot of quiet parts and some good dialogue. The acting's mostly really subtle and subdued. By the way, the cast is pretty impressive, and they did a very good job. And there's this really nice piano score too. A lot of the movie actually had a pretty somber but kinda sweet feel to it. It was interesting. But story-wise it was kinda hard to figure out. I mean, not a whole lot happens. There's essentially this kinda intertwined hodgepodge of people, just basically going about their lives. And at the center is this Australian girl who shows up and kinda fucks up their whole dynamic. And I'm not really sure what the movie is actually about, but a lot of the characters seem pretty unhappy. Or discontent maybe. There seems to be this theme of don't waste your youth, make the most of it, so you don't end up being middle-aged with a bunch of regrets and feeling like you settled. But the whole tone and the general vibe of the movie was really interesting to me. It was sort of a feel-good movie in a weird way, because it doesn't really seem like one, but for some reason it just put me in a really good mood. Kinda strange actually, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. Overall though, I liked it. I can see a lot of people not liking it though. You could argue that it's boring and that the story is lacking. And you'd have a point. But I liked it. Would I recommend it though? If you like small indie movies in general, sure. Give it a shot. Otherwise, probably skip it. So go watch all 3 of them. Or none. Or a couple. Or just one. I'm not your dad.